Yes, my pleasure. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me say maybe a sentence on the center that I'm currently directing. It's called the Quello Center for Media and Information Policy, which gives you the scope of the work we're doing. Jim Quello used to be a commissioner at the Federal Communications Commission. He was from Detroit. He served for almost a quarter century at that commission, was a very impassioned public interest advocate, and he always was working on those sort of um, bipartisan solutions that would really advance the public interest. So the center tries to do theoretically rigorous work that is practically actionable. And sometimes, it's difficult to reconcile those two, but that's our goal. And I'd like to sort of briefly mention, because this was alluded to, two pieces of work that we did. One was in the city of Detroit. Now that study has been read like a Rorschach test by many people, right? I mean, it's a nuanced piece of work, and you emphasize different aspects of it. Essentially, what we found are three things. This was actually done by my predecessors before I became the director of the institute. One was that indeed connectivity is not the primary issue probably in many Detroit neighborhoods, although I should say this study was limited only to three of those. Cody Rouge, I think this neighborhood, 7-8 Mile, Woodward, and then I think Milwaukee Junction were the three neighborhoods. But in those, its representative was done in collaboration with Wayne State University, a survey of people plus focus groups. However, households are underconnected. There's no way not to see this, right? But they're very creative, like the bra-strapped model also is very, very widespread, where they find ingenious ways to find connectivity, whether it's through their neighbors, piggybacking on others, going to coffee houses and so forth. Not the best way to really take advantage of these technologies. The second thing we found is that the myth that broadband is used for entertainment purposes is completely wrong. Entertainment was the number 8 or number 9 type of uses, among others. It was job seeking, information seeking, health access to healthcare information, and so forth. And then lastly, we did find evidence that there was indeed an affordability issue. Right? And the cost of getting broadband in the city of Detroit is actually comparable to mid-income countries, globally speaking, and that's relatively high, right? And so something has to be done on that regard. And then the second one, sorry, that I'd like to mention briefly, because I think it contributes to this discussion, is the one that Joe already alluded to. It's that related to the Moonshot project, and that our broadband data is inaccurate has been known since the NTIA created the first map about 10 years ago, right? And it's a statistical attribution rule that they used for simplicity that led to an overcounting of connectivity. And so there's many, many efforts around the United States currently to improve the data, the quality of the data. But there's one big flaw of this data. All we do by looking at speed measurements, for example, is we look at those who are connected. We have no clue what happens to those who are not connected, right? So we figured of course we would like to know how big the quality, or good the quality of connectivity is for those who are connected, and that's what the crowdsourcing, technology-driven model that we built, a platform to measure internet speed and internet quality, primarily initially with K through 12 students, on a pilot basis together with Merit Networks. But we also built a second parallel study that looks at a survey-based study in classrooms with the same schools. And we found very, very ingenious ways, we think, to be able to connect those two data sets without violating any privacy issues. They're completely identified data. We use like a data trustee model that eventually will allow us to link the survey data with the accessibility data, and for the first time, we'll actually be able to tell what the consequences are of poor quality connectivity or no connectivity at all. And when we talk about infrastructure, part of the cost is actually what kind of infrastructure do we envision, right? And we cannot answer that question realistically unless we know more specifically what the benefits or the harms of not having access to infrastructure is, and we think that our work will enable us to answer those questions in a more robust and more meaningful way so that we can find least cost solutions to really fix the problem going forward. So in a nutshell, maybe more than a nutshell, but that's